He didn't seize power with a sword. He didn't win it with fiery speeches, or with charm, or with the love of the people. He took it with paperwork. While louder, more brilliant men fought each other for the spotlight, this man quietly accepted a dull administrative job that nobody else wanted, and used it to place his own loyal followers into every corner of the state. By the time his rivals understood the danger, it was already far too late. He would go on to rule one of the largest nations on earth for nearly 30 years, through a single, perfected weapon: fear. A fear so complete that people informed on their own neighbors, denounced their own families, and publicly praised the very man they were terrified of. This is the dark psychology of Joseph Stalin. Nothing about his birth suggested world history. He was born in 1878 in a small town in Georgia on the edge of the Russian Empire, the son of a poor, often violent cobbler. His childhood was harsh and unstable. He was bright, though, bright enough to win a place at a religious seminary, where his family hoped he would become a priest. But inside those walls, the young man discovered something far more powerful to him than religion: revolutionary politics. He devoured the ideas of Marx. He left the path of the priesthood behind, and he stepped into the dangerous underground world of revolution. In those years he was a militant, organizing, agitating, even involved in robberies to fund the cause. He was arrested, exiled to Siberia, and escaped again and again. He was tough, patient, and unusually calculating. And somewhere along the way, he gave himself a new name. He abandoned the long Georgian name he was born with and chose one built from the Russian word for steel. Stalin, the man of steel. It was branding, and it told you exactly how he wanted the world to see him. Hard, cold, unbreakable. But steel alone doesn't conquer an empire. What truly set Stalin apart was something far less dramatic, and far more dangerous. When the Bolsheviks seized control of Russia, the famous revolutionaries became its new leaders. Men like Trotsky, brilliant speakers, war heroes, intellectuals who dazzle crowds. Stalin was not one of them. He was respected as a hard worker, but few saw him as a serious rival for the top. And that underestimation was the greatest gift he ever received. In 1922, Stalin was given a position called General Secretary. On paper, it was boring, administrative, a job about paperwork, appointments, and party records, the kind of role ambitious men avoided because it seemed to lead nowhere. Stalin understood what no one else did. Whoever controls the appointments controls the people. Whoever controls the people controls everything. From that quiet desk, he decided who got promoted, who got transferred, who joined the party, and who was pushed out. Slowly, methodically, he filled the entire machinery of the state with people who owed their careers to him. He wasn't fighting for power in the open. He was building a hidden network of loyalty, one appointment at a time. This is the first dark principle. The most dangerous power is the kind no one is watching. While his rivals fought for the spotlight, Stalin quietly took control of the wiring behind the walls. And by the time they noticed, the entire structure already answered to him. Even Lenin, near the end of his life, sensed the danger and warned that Stalin had concentrated too much power in his hands. But the warning was buried. It was already too late. When Lenin died, a struggle for control of the revolution began. And here Stalin revealed his second great talent. He almost never fought his enemies directly. He made them destroy each other. His most formidable rival was Trotsky, gifted, popular, and arrogant. Rather than confront him alone, Stalin temporarily allied with other powerful figures who feared Trotsky's ambition. Together, they isolated him, stripped him of influence, and pushed him out, eventually into exile. Then, with Trotsky gone, Stalin turned on the very allies who had helped him. He shifted to a new set of partners, used them to crush the old ones, and then discarded them in turn. One by one, the men who could have stopped him were maneuvered into opposing each other, while Stalin stood in the middle, appearing reasonable, moderate, indispensable. This is the third principle. Never let your rivals unite against you. Keep them divided, suspicious, and pointed at one another, and let them do the work of eliminating each other. Each faction believed it was using Stalin. In reality, Stalin was using all of them. By the end, the dazzling revolutionaries who had once overshadowed him were gone, sidelined, exiled, or worse. And the quiet administrator no one had taken seriously stood alone at the top of the Soviet state. What came next transformed Stalin from a political master into something far darker. Because once he held power, his entire focus shifted to a single question: How do you make sure no one can ever take it from you? His answer was terror, but terror engineered with chilling precision. In the 1930s, Stalin launched a wave of purges that swept through every level of Soviet society. Party officials, military officers, scientists, artists, ordinary workers. Millions were arrested, imprisoned in vast labor camps, or executed. Public show trials were staged, in which loyal old revolutionaries confessed, often under enormous pressure, to crimes they could not possibly have committed. But here is the truly dark part, the psychological core of it. The terror was deliberately unpredictable. There was no safe behavior, no reliable way to protect yourself. People who were completely loyal vanished alongside genuine opponents. Even the secret police who carried out the arrests were themselves later arrested and executed. And that randomness was the point. If only the guilty are punished, the innocent feel safe, and safe people can resist. But if anyone can be taken, at any time, for any reason or no reason at all, then everyone lives in permanent fear. No one organizes. No one trusts. No one dares. This is the fourth principle, and the most terrible. Predictable punishment controls behavior, but unpredictable terror controls the soul. Stalin didn't just want obedience. He wanted a population too frightened to even think about resistance. But a single man, even with a secret police, cannot watch 100 million people. So Stalin did something even more insidious. He made the people watch each other. Under his system, denunciation became a way of life. Citizens were encouraged and pressured to report anyone who said the wrong thing, held the wrong opinion, or seemed disloyal. Neighbors informed on neighbors. Colleagues informed on colleagues. The regime even celebrated stories of children who reported their own parents, holding them up as model citizens. Think about what this does to a society. When anyone around you might be an informer, you can no longer speak freely to anyone. Not your friends, not your co-workers, not even your family. Trust itself collapses. And a people who cannot trust one another can never come together to resist. This is the fifth principle. The most efficient control isn't a guard on every corner. It's making the population police itself. Stalin turned ordinary fear into a vast, invisible web, where every citizen became both a potential victim and a potential weapon. The state was no longer something outside the people. It lived inside their own kitchens, their own conversations, their own silence. And yet, and this is what makes Stalin so psychologically fascinating, he didn't only want to be feared. He wanted to be worshipped. Alongside the terror, the regime built an enormous cult around him. His portrait hung in every office, every classroom, every home. He was praised endlessly as the wise father of the nation, the genius guiding the people toward a glorious future. History books were rewritten to magnify his role. Photographs were even altered to erase the people he had purged, as if they had never existed at all. This is the sixth principle, and the most unsettling. Fear and adoration are not opposites. Used together, they are far stronger than either alone. The fear made people obey. The cult gave them a reason to tell themselves the obedience was love, that they were loyal not because they were terrified, but because the leader truly was great. It is a deeply human survival instinct. When you are powerless before someone, it is psychologically easier, safer, even, to convince yourself that you admire them. Stalin understood this perfectly. He didn't just imprison his people's bodies. He shaped how they were allowed to feel. But a system built entirely on fear carries a hidden cost, and Stalin would pay it at the worst possible moment. In his purges, he had torn through the leadership of his own army, removing and destroying a huge portion of his most experienced military officers, simply because he feared they might one day threaten him. He had traded competence for loyalty, and strength for safety. Then came the test. When a massive invasion struck the Soviet Union, the army that had to defend the nation was led, in many places, by inexperienced replacements, because the talented commanders had been swept away in the terror. The early disasters were catastrophic, the losses staggering. The Soviet Union would ultimately survive and prevail, at an almost unimaginable human cost. But the lesson was carved into history. A leader who surrounds himself only with people who are too afraid to ever disagree will, sooner or later, be surrounded by people who cannot tell him the truth. Fear silences the very warnings that could have saved him. The same weapon that secured Stalin's power also blinded him. And in the end, the fear he had built came for him too, in the strangest way of all. By 1953, Stalin was an old and deeply paranoid man, still seeing plots everywhere, still terrifying everyone around him. He had given strict orders that he was never to be disturbed without permission. One day, he did not emerge from his room. Hours passed. His guards and staff knew something might be wrong, but not one of them dared to go in and check on him, because the terror of disturbing him, of breaking his orders, was greater than their concern for his life. They had seen what happened to people who crossed him. So they waited, and waited. By the time anyone finally found the courage to enter, he had collapsed and lay helpless on the floor, and critical hours had been lost. Help came late. Soon after, the man of steel was dead. It is one of history's darkest ironies. Stalin had built a fear so total, so absolute, that in his final hours it formed a wall around him that no one could cross. The weapon he had used to control everyone ultimately left him to die alone on the floor of his own home. So what does Stalin really teach us? That the most dangerous person in the room is rarely the loudest. He rose not through brilliance or charisma, but through patience, through controlling the boring machinery no one else watched, and through understanding human fear better than almost anyone in history. He knew that divided rivals destroy themselves, that unpredictable terror breaks the will to resist, and that a frightened people will even learn to call their fear love. But his story carries a warning that points in both directions. Power built purely on fear isolates the one who wields it. It strips away honesty, surrounds you with silence, and in the end, leaves you blind. The strongest grip imaginable became the very thing that trapped him. The uncomfortable question Stalin leaves us with is this: how much of the control in any system, a country, an institution, a relationship, runs not on loyalty, but on fear quietly disguised as something nobler? And what happens to the people at the very top when the only thing surrounding them is fear? If this changed the way you see power, subscribe. Because here, we don't study history to relive the past. We study it to understand the forces that shape people, even today. And to see how fear was turned into an empire centuries before Stalin, watch our video on Genghis Khan next.